Liam Neeson was removed from first class due to a crew mistake. No one checked his name. No one knew who he was. Minutes later, the airline lost $500 million. In this video, you'll discover how one quiet decision triggered the downfall of an entire company and why no one on that flight ever forgot what happened. Watch until the end. The twist in this story will leave you speechless. He walked with quiet purpose through the crowded terminal of Heathrow, unnoticed by most, unbothered by all. A grey overcoat hung from his shoulders, worn but neat, and his suitcase rolled soundlessly behind him like a shadow that knew its place. To the untrained eye, he was just another older gentleman traveling alone with the kind of face you might recognize but wouldn't dare interrupt. He preferred it that way. In a world obsessed with spectacle, Liam Neeson had mastered the art of invisibility. He passed by the high-end boutiques, the polished lounges, and the suited travelers sipping bitter coffee behind mirrored sunglasses. The gate agents didn't flinch when they saw him. Just another name on the manifest. First class, seat 1A. No bells, no red carpets, no announcements. Just a boarding pass with his name on it and a quiet nod exchanged at the counter. No one checked the name. No one paused to look twice. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, that was exactly what they shouldn't have done. Inside the aircraft, the first-class cabin glowed with understated opulence. Soft amber lighting spilled from above, caressing leather seats that whispered privilege with every inch. Crystal glasses clinked gently. Magazines lay unread on mahogany panels. And there, in the heart of it all, was his seat. 1A. Or so it should have been. He stood in the aisle for only a moment, long enough to see someone else already reclining in his spot, one leg lazily crossed, a glass of champagne already halfway empty. The man didn't look up. He didn't need to. His kind rarely did. Behind him, a flight attendant adjusted glasses on a tray, her smile polished and practiced. But what followed wasn't an offer of assistance. It was a request to move. Without checking the boarding pass, without a word about his name, they gestured toward the business-class cabin. A last-minute change, they said, a seating adjustment. Someone important needed the seat. They asked for his cooperation, not his name, not his story, just his silence. And so he moved. He walked down the aisle, past eyes that scanned his coat, his age, his silence. The space around him tightened, not physically, but socially. He could feel it. The weight of perception. He didn't belong in business class, they thought. But they never said it out loud. They didn't need to. He sat in 14C, upright and still, the curtain to first class now firmly drawn. Behind it, champagne continued to flow, and the man in 1A basked in the comfort of stolen space. Around Liam, whispers sparked quietly. A couple across the aisle exchanged assumptions. Maybe he was downgraded. Maybe he was lucky to be there at all. They didn't recognize him. Or maybe they did, and it didn't matter. He didn't shift in his seat. He didn't glare or sigh. He simply watched, observed, measured. The silence around him wasn't peaceful. It was judgment, disguised as courtesy. Even the crew passed by without offering a blanket or a glance. There was no malice in their eyes, just something worse, indifference. His fingers moved slowly, deliberately, as he reached into the pocket of his coat. From it, he withdrew a slim device, black, unmarked, familiar only to those who needed to know, the screen lit with a glow that didn't attract attention, but demanded respect. A prompt blinked softly. Activate Clause 7C. He hesitated for a breath, not because he doubted, but because he understood the cost. Then, with the pressure of a single thumb, he confirmed. Nothing changed, not visibly. No announcement, no commotion, no reaction from those around him. The curtain didn't move. The man in 1A still laughed. The drink still flowed. But deep in the system, the ripple had already begun. At corporate headquarters, miles away, red lights began to flash quietly in systems only a few could access. Security logs were pulled, names were flagged, protocols unlocked, and a single term repeated across every interface: operational ethics breach. Back on the plane, no one knew. Not yet. He glanced down at the device again. A new message had appeared. Initial sequence active, monitoring in progress. The world hadn't caught up, but it would. The flight hadn't taken off. The engines hadn't roared to life, but the story had already taken flight, without fanfare, without fury, without permission. And as he leaned back into the synthetic comfort of seat 14C, the faintest crack formed in the mask of order the airline had spent decades perfecting. Because Liam Neeson hadn't been moved, he had been tested, and they were about to learn what silence really sounds like when it answers with consequence. At that exact moment, a soft alert chimed deep within the aircraft's encrypted comm system, followed by 5 flashing words. Primary stakeholder protocol engaged, seat 14C. The hum of the aircraft grew steadier as Flight 209 ascended above the clouds, carving a quiet path across the Atlantic sky. Outside, the world was endless, white and blue. Inside, the plane carried a different kind of storm, one invisible to passengers, but growing in the veins of the system with every second that passed. Seat 14C remained still. Liam Neeson didn't speak, he didn't move, but the ripple he triggered was already reaching boardrooms and terminals continents away. Inside the cockpit, the first officer glanced at a small screen near the throttle. An unfamiliar red notification blinked briefly before vanishing. He assumed it was a system glitch. He was wrong. Below deck, in the secure operations bay wired into the airline's internal communication channel, a small tablet began streaming silent code in real time. It pinged a regional compliance server, then legal, then corporate audit. A protocol that hadn't been triggered in nearly a decade was now fully operational, Clause 7C. Few people even remembered what it meant. At Atlantic Air's corporate headquarters in New York, a late-night junior analyst caught the alert first. She blinked at her screen, leaned forward, and reread the line. Clause 7C, Operational Ethics Breach, initiated by Stakeholder ID LN01748. The initials didn't register until she searched the database. Then her heart stopped. Back on board, the service in first class continued as if nothing had happened. The man in 1A, now fully stretched and on his second glass of champagne, laughed at something on his phone, careless, untouchable. He spoke to no one, but carried the air of someone used to being listened to. Around him, the crew offered warmth tailored for status, not humanity. But their warmth didn't reach beyond the curtain. In the business cabin, Liam's presence was still largely ignored, except by the few who couldn't help but glance. A woman in a navy sweater 2 rows ahead stole a look that lingered, her brows slightly furrowed, as if something about him tugged at a memory. A young man near the galley lowered his earbuds and stared longer than polite. Not recognition, not yet, but something close. In Zurich, the legal office for Volta Capital began flagging alerts tied to Atlantic Air's senior flight operations log. Lines of code fed directly into an encrypted server. At the top of the file sat a single entry, LN01748, internal status, primary stakeholder, active. No one in the air yet knew the truth, but on the ground, a quiet panic had begun. Bryce Harmon, the onboard flight manager, leaned against the galley divider and blinked at his crew tablet. He wasn't used to seeing executive-level pings on flights, much less ones with restricted access codes. His screen showed a warning he didn't recognize. Clause 7C engagement in progress. Do not override. Confused, he tapped the passenger manifest. Seat 14C. The name displayed was L. Neeson. He paused, his eyes widened, and for the first time that flight, he turned toward business class, not with the indifference of earlier, but with caution. He didn't walk over, not yet. Instead, he turned to Natalie, the lead attendant, who was wiping glasses with rehearsed elegance in first class. Her face, always poised, showed the slightest crack as she listened to Bryce whisper the name again. Liam Neeson. She froze. Back in 14C, Liam's demeanor hadn't changed. His shoulders remained relaxed. His hands rested calmly on his lap. He wasn't waiting for attention. He wasn't watching the panic unfold. He simply existed in the eye of it, unshaken, immovable, and the system was doing exactly what he intended. He had activated Clause 7C not for revenge, not for show, but for correction, for truth. The kind of truth that only emerges when arrogance meets consequence. By the time the stock markets opened in New York, automated trades had already begun to execute. Volta Capital's AI-driven trading protocol started shedding Atlantic Air shares in precise high-volume intervals, 1%, then 5%, then 10%. Inside the aircraft, phones still on airplane mode rested quietly in coat pockets and carry-ons. But notifications were already queuing in the background, market alerts, press inquiries, and internal briefings waiting for devices to reconnect the moment wheels touched down. Natalie returned to first class with her usual grace, but her eyes kept flicking toward the curtain. She now knew the man they had dismissed, the man they hadn't even bothered to greet by name. She felt it like weight on her chest. In row 3, a businessman finally whispered to his wife, "Didn't that guy get moved from first class?" She nodded. "I think he's someone important." But they didn't really know, not yet. A few rows behind, the young man near the galley, Evan, sat stiffly in his jump seat, replaying a memory from boarding. Natalie's words echoed in his head. The man in 1A requested no one beside him. I mean, look at that guy. The other one? Just some old actor probably using points. He swallowed hard. He now realized that man wasn't just a passenger, he was the catalyst. And from Zurich to Manhattan, senior leadership was waking up to the same reality. Inside the plane, the hum continued. The curtain swayed slightly as a breeze passed through the aisle. Natalie and Bryce stood near the galley, their tablets buzzing in tandem. Bryce's screen now displayed Confirm Stakeholder Protocol Visibility. Code Status Irreversible. He didn't know what to do. Back in 14C, Liam opened his notebook, not for drama, not for anyone to see, just to write. A simple sentence, small and quiet. Power is not presence, it's awareness. He closed the notebook. He didn't look angry. He didn't look pleased. He looked exactly the same as he had when they told him to move, and that, perhaps, was the most terrifying thing of all. He wasn't reacting, he was teaching, and the lesson wasn't over. Just then, Bryce's tablet buzzed again, this time flashing a direct message from Zurich Legal. Confirm immediately. Are you aware that Mr. Neeson holds controlling equity in the company? His breath caught. At that same moment in the first-class cabin, the man in 1A chuckled as he tapped his champagne glass against the tray table and said, loud enough for half the cabin to hear, "They'll let anyone on board these days." And from behind the curtain, the storm began to move forward. The cabin had changed, not in light or air or temperature, but in energy. The invisible current that once pulsed through first class with smug certainty now twisted into something else. Discomfort, questions, guilt. Seat 1A no longer felt like a throne. It felt exposed. The man still lounged there, but with less ease. His posture remained, but the atmosphere around him had shifted. Passengers who once laughed at his careless jokes now stared forward, rigid and quiet. Silence had become a mirror. No one wanted to look into it, but it was too late to look away. Back in the galley, Bryce stood pale, tablet in hand, reviewing the third compliance alert in under 5 minutes. Natalie hovered near him, her hands no longer steady. The calm exterior she'd perfected over thousands of flights was cracking, and for the first time in her career, she didn't know which way to walk or what to say when she got there. At the center of it all sat Liam Neeson in 14C, unmoved, calm, patient, not punishing, but watching. His silence had created space, and now that space demanded accountability. There was no drama, no spectacle, only awareness, and its weight was immense. In Zurich, legal teams scrambled, executives whispered frantically on conference calls. Multiple regions now reported active trades initiated by stakeholder authority. Liam's identity, previously shielded by a code name and ownership proxy, had been confirmed. He wasn't just a shareholder, he was the controlling one. In the air, passengers began to stir. Whispers spread like quiet wildfire. Phones, though still off, buzzed faintly with cued alerts. A man in business class tapped his screen, startled as the message appeared mid-flight. Atlantic Air stock down 14, 3%, internal audit triggered, stakeholder breach reported. He looked up, wide-eyed, scanning the rows. Then he turned to his partner and mouthed a name. Neeson. Word spread fast, but not fast enough to outrun consequence. The cockpit door opened. Captain Harris stepped into the aisle, composed but grave. He walked past the whispering rows and stopped just before 14C. For a moment he didn't speak. He simply bowed his head with the quiet acknowledgement of a man who now understood what had been set in motion. He extended a formal apology, one delivered not as a performance, but with the weight of regret. Liam nodded once. He didn't need the apology, but it was necessary that it be given. Then Bryce approached. His hand trembled slightly as he held his tablet low, eyes cast downward. He cleared his throat. "Mr. Neeson," he said carefully, "Zurich has contacted us. We've been informed of your position and we'd like to restore your original seat." The words tasted like ash in his mouth. Liam stood, not in anger, not in pride, but in balance. He picked up his coat, folded it across one arm, and walked silently toward the first-class cabin. As he passed the curtain, it didn't sway like before. It parted with reverence. All eyes followed him, some in disbelief, some in shame, others in awe. He stopped beside Bryce and turned, not with accusation, but clarity. He withdrew from his coat pocket a slim, platinum-edged black card. No name, no number. Just a crest. Volta Capital. He held it up for no more than 2 seconds, long enough for Bryce, for Natalie, for every silent witness to see it. Then he tucked it away. No words, none were needed. He continued forward and stopped beside 1A. The man who once occupied it now sat hunched, his confidence broken into silence. No champagne, no laughter, just the echo of what he'd assumed he could get away with. Liam didn't look at him, not directly. Instead, he placed his hand gently on the seat's headrest and spoke, not to one person, but to the cabin. "I gave this company an opportunity to demonstrate its culture, not its branding. It failed." He sat down, not to reclaim a seat, but to reclaim truth. The weight of the moment settled over the cabin like fog. Passengers didn't dare move. The silence that followed was no longer void. It was verdict. Further back, Evan, the junior attendant, watched from his jump seat with wide eyes. He had seen what happened, all of it. The dismissal, the indifference, and now the reversal. It wasn't a punishment, it was a correction, and it had been executed without a raised voice or a single demand, only presence, only truth. At the terminal in New York, more suits waited. Not for Liam, for the man in 1A. As the passengers disembarked, legal representatives calmly delivered the verdict. His privileges revoked, his membership suspended, his travel accounts frozen pending review. He stuttered a protest, but it didn't matter. The system he had once weaponized against others had finally turned its gaze on him, and as Liam passed the final checkpoint, a young employee stepped forward, a ground agent in her 20s, eyes bright but nervous. "Mr. Neeson," she whispered, "on behalf of everyone, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry." He met her gaze, gently nodded and said nothing. Because apologies don't erase action, but awareness, that changes everything. He stepped through the terminal doors without fanfare. No press, no entourage, just quiet. And in a world that often confuses noise with power, Liam Neeson reminded them all, power isn't how loudly you speak. It's what you choose to fix when no one is watching. If this story moved you as much as it shocked everyone on that flight, leave a comment below telling us what you would have done in Liam Neeson's place. And if you believe respect should never depend on status, subscribe now for more stories that uncover what's hidden and reveal the true power of quiet justice. Because sometimes the quietest gesture is the most transformative.